Hello friends, I'm Kayla and I'm here today to finish the books that you couldn't. Okay, but actually in all seriousness, I know I'm not the only booktuber who put in their goals of the year to DNF more, to give up on books. DNF is did not finish, to not struggle through books this year, to not feel guilty about stopping a book when it's not going well. I've seen quite a few other booktubers commit to this goal this year, and so I've been keeping an eye on everyone to see if they're following through.
I want to DNF more books so that I'm not having so many average books. I think that I DNF a decent amount, but it could be better.
I would love to DNF more books because I don't want to waste my time. Okay, I want to be reading books that I actually like.
This is my DNF era.
I want to be able to come to you and say, oh yeah, I read this DNF. Oh yeah, I read this DNF'd. DNF'd.
And I think I need to be a little bit better of like DNFing books even if I already spent a lot of time reading them, because that's I think where I struggle.
I don't normally watch wrap-ups, but I have watched all of them. Everything that has been coming into my subscription box this year, I have been watching, and I've been seeing people talk about the books they gave up on, and I've been creating a list. The list is long. I also decided to poll everyone on Instagram to see what people there had been DNFing. And I've picked 5 books today that people had given up on that are ones that I'm also interested in. I think it's easy to give up on a book if like I didn't already want to read it. So I wanted to pick things that were on my TBR, that were on other people's TBRs, and they couldn't finish it. And I want to see why. The first one I saw show up is on my most anticipated list of 2023, episode 13 by Craig DeLuey. Ashley DNF'd this. We'll talk through why the DNFs happened, if I think they're justified by the end. But we've got episode 13, which is a horror paranormal documentary situation. Also, a couple people on Instagram confirmed they too DNF'd it. Next up, we've got All Hallows by Christopher Golden, which is so interesting because I DNF'd my first Christopher Golden just last month. This one I saw Jan DNF and also Ashley DNF. So they gave up on it. A couple people on Instagram confirmed, could not finish it. This is another horror. One I didn't see coming is Killers of a Certain Age by Deanna Raybourn. I saw Alicia DNF this one. I have had great experience with A Curious Beginning from this author. This is a totally different vibe. It's a mystery book and I want to read it so bad, so this is my excuse. So that's 3 books mentioned by booktubers that I'm gonna finish for them. And then I decided to pick, I was gonna do just the most popular one that was mentioned on Instagram, but there was 2 that were pretty equal. They had between like 5 and 10 mentions. One of them I also DNF'd this year, so this is my second try with it. And one of them I just, in my wildest dreams, did not see coming, so I couldn't ignore it. The first one that I too DNF'd is Big Swiss by Jen Began. To be fair, I borrowed this from the library along with 10 other books, read the first chapter of so many of them, and then just chose a different one to read. This didn't do anything for me, but the cover's so fun. It has completely mixed ratings, and I just want to know if it's going to be a win for me or a loss. So many people gave up on it. It's one of those dark literary fiction stories about women and friendship, I think. And then Babel by R.F. Kuang. I didn't see this coming because I have only seen positive reviews, and I guess I've only seen positive reviews because the people who don't like it don't finish it and give it a low rating, they just DNF it. But wow, was this mentioned so many times by so many people. And it's understandable because I've heard some people say it's not exactly the genre they're expecting going in. Also, it's quite long. This is a historical fantasy, linguistic focused story. It's been on my TBR since like the day it came out, so I feel morally responsible for reading it before I get to Yellowface, even though right now this one's appealing to me more. This could most definitely be an ongoing series, so if you want to let me know in the comments below something that you have DNF'd this year that you want me to finish for you, I mean, let me know. But this is the TBR for this week. I'm so excited to get into all of these. They're highly anticipated, so let's see how they go.
The only book that I did DNF in the month of February is Killers of a Certain Age. I'm looking for other mystery books that have that feel of the Finlay Donovan series, where there is a mystery, but there's also all of these other ludicrous things going on. But unfortunately, this one didn't work out for me. I actually didn't get very far into this book. I DNF'd it before I finished chapter 1. Maybe I just wasn't in the mood for it. I did try to listen to the audiobook and I just wasn't engaged. It wasn't keeping my attention. And granted, I only read about a chapter of this book, right? So it's one that I might revisit later on in the year, depending on how I'm feeling.
So DNFing obviously happens at any stage in a book, and for a plethora of reasons. It could be just the writing style didn't mesh with you, there were some triggering things in it, the plot didn't go where you liked, you didn't like the characters, all valid reasons. My most common DNF definitely happens in the first chapter if the writing style works for me or not. I could list you probably 5 books that I've read in the past year that I knew in the first chapter it was going to be 5 stars, and then 5 books that I knew in the first chapter I was going to probably hate. And I think a lot of times that first chapter just indicates if it's the style of book you were even looking for. So when you look at Killers of a Certain Age, it kind of feels like, I feel like, for the audience of the Thursday Murder Club. But maybe I'm making that comparison just because it's about an elderly group and there's a mystery involved. I know that one's not about assassins, they're solving the mystery. In this one, they are assassins. So even though you know it's about assassins, I feel like the first chapter caught me a little off guard because it is high action. And what it is a flashback to the last hit that they had. And then once chapter 2 comes in, you can see it doesn't give a year, which is interesting at the top of it, like the first chapter did, but it says like in late November 2018, and then you're seeing what these people are up to now. But in this November 1979, it is like a hit. It's planning out the kill, it's successfully completing the kill, it creates all of these dynamics between these women, and it's a fun setup. But honestly, it was a lot. It was 21 pages of a lot of action that I wasn't necessarily expecting, and then it does go into a slower plot, but I can definitely see how even if you know slower things are to come and you know there's going to be higher action built up because you know it's following assassins, that first chapter was kind of a lot. Anyway, before I continue, I literally just sat here and read the first chapter because I just finished some client meetings for the day. It's the start of the month and I had to do some check-ins, and now I'm gonna go shopping at HomeSense, and Value Village it's somewhere over there because I'm not in the city super often, so I haven't been in a couple months, and maybe they will have great success, or I will have great success in the book section of Value Village. Hello, it's the next day. It shouldn't be the next day. This to me is a one-day read. It should be a one-day read. It's a palate cleanser, it's quick, it's easy, there's not a lot of thinking you need to do, action-packed, but boy, do I want to DNF it. So hang out with me while I finish getting ready for the day and I will explain. I was like 15% of the way through, and I know it was 15% of the way through because that's the point that I grabbed the audiobook, which is a big mistake. So at 15% in was the first time that I felt like I don't really want to finish this. Like, it's not doing anything that interesting for me. I just don't feel like I have been fully hooked into the story quite yet. And I was thinking, like, this is the worst case scenario, right? That I want to DNF a book for the DNF video. But actually, I think this is best case scenario because now I can relate to all the people who DNF'd it. And since I am going to push through that feeling, I can tell you objectively at the end if you should continue or not based on how I feel by the end. So I checked the Goodreads, and 10 to 15% is when a lot of the people who DNF'd it did DNF it. I saw that number a lot. So I thought, okay, my library has the audiobook. Let me download it. Let me find the spot I'm at. It turned out to be 15%, and I lined up with a lot of the people on Goodreads. And now I have just gotten to 35% of the audiobook, and this is where the other big slew of people DNF'd it. I see the number 30, 35, 36, 37, a lot. And this again is where I'm feeling that same feeling of I don't want to continue. Like, it hasn't hooked me yet. I feel like I'm not connected to the characters. I don't really care about the story yet. But I'm switching back to it physically because I may be alone in this, but the audiobook is not good. I wouldn't say it's actively bad, but it's confusing to me because half of the book is written like current day when the women are older. And we have our main character, Billy, and it's written in first person, and Billy is telling us the situation. So she has worked with this group of assassins for a long time, and they've recently retired. And then when they go on this trip together, there's this person they recognize on the cruise ship, and they're like, the only reason this person would be here and we weren't informed that he was here, that means that we are the targets. Someone has hired an assassin to take us out for whatever reason. So that's now the mystery and the action of it all. But what I didn't realize is a significant portion of the book, I would say a third to a half, is in the past. It's in the 70s, and it's actively like on a mission. These women are spies, which is great if you're looking for an action-based story. I don't really love a spy story, so you might be thinking, why'd you even pick this one up? I guess I just thought the vibe would be different. And those flashback scenes are written in third person and seem to be about the entire group of women. There's like 4 of them. We've got Mary Alice, Helen, and Natalie. And it seems like those flashback sections are about all of them because they're written in third person. But Billy still seems to be very much the main character. Like a lot of the inner thoughts you get are still from Billy, yet the audiobook has a different narrator, which makes sense because it's third person, but because you get so much of Billy's thoughts, it feels like they just have two narrators for Billy. And that would make sense if one of them was clearly older. And doing a search of the audiobook narrators, that is true, one of them is older. But I would say she sounds like the younger one to me. And I feel like if you're gonna have this third person narrator, it should be a distinctly different voice. Or even like, why couldn't it have been a man, kind of like Charlie's Angels vibes, where Charlie's narrating? Because if it's not meant to be a character, then like make them sound super different. Give them a different accent, like anything. So I'm now 30 to 40% in. I'm switching back to the physical experience, and I hope this feeling of wanting to DNF goes away very quickly. All right, I've got about 70 pages to go. That's it. I don't want to put it down anymore. I am interested in what's happening in the current day storyline. Every time it flashes to the past, which is also moving at a different speed than the present, so we've covered, I guess, a couple years now, it is absolutely not holding my attention, those past storylines, but they're coming in less frequently now. But I'm assuming that we're getting it for a reason, besides just getting the backstory. Like there's going to be some kind of connection, so I need to pay a little more attention to the next couple. But the current day storyline, it's not the most interesting, like who put the hit out on them, but why. We've gotten an idea as to why, an answer, and so now they aren't looking into that. They're just trying to take out the people who were trying to take them out. And the way that they're doing it is fun to read. I would say the most interesting part of the book is them figuring out who their marks are and how to take people down and how to get into different places. If you're someone who considers yourself like an expert at getting information, like Googling the right thing, finding the person you're looking for, it's fun to watch them go through their own process and like how they snuck into this hotel and all of the ways that they got there. It's very Ocean 8 vibes, where you get to see the entire thought process and planning and then it being fulfilled. What I could definitely do without is them like kind of making fun of some people. There was this like villainous character who was like this fat man, and they were describing his fatness. And then one of them was talking about her like sexual exploits and making fun of a guy who was uncircumcised. It does have that kind of crass old woman humor that I feel like some people are looking for in this type of story, and some people will be really turned off by. I know that people who DNF'd it have said that it's a little too vulgar, but there's like this whole, I grew up with a lot of movies where like the comedy of the family is the grandma who has just like a potty mouth and she has no filter and just says like the most uncouth things at the dinner table. And that's how these women are. They're very open to talking about their sexual past. One of the women at one point refers to like her old wrist hurting, and she's like, oh, it reminds me of how it feels to give too many hand jobs. Anyway, let me wrap it up and give you my final rating. And with that, I'm gonna give it a 3. I think this was an interesting, fine read. I think if you DNF'd it, I don't think there's any reason that I would tell you you should pick it back up and continue. I would definitely say as the book continues, when you get to know the characters more, you care more about the plot and what's happening. But there wasn't anything super interesting or shocking. And Deanna Raybourn typically writes series. So I think this almost felt like a debut in a way. Like, can I successfully build out all of these characters and all of this backstory and all of the current day activities in one book? And I don't know if it was super successful, and it probably could have been more enjoyable if it was a series and we followed them through, you know how there are some movies where like the characters meet back up every 10 years and have a movie? It could have been like that. So we saw their first time together and then an entire book 10 years later, an entire book upon their retirement, and then all of the impact that happened here would be stronger because we knew all of the characters and all of the things that we're supposed to know because we have hundreds of pages of setup rather than just the occasional chapter. What I will say Deanna Raybourn, I think, is an expert at is pacing. I think she does a really good job of satisfying scenes and not leaving you wondering about something for too long. So for example, they will find a clue to something and it'll say, I saw a name on a page and I knew exactly what I had to do, and then the chapter ends. And in another author's hands, and what I've read many times before, that's the moment you have a flashback. or it's going to take a couple more chapters to get the answers of what she saw in the book and what she's going to do about it now. But Deanna knows that she can't leave us in suspense for that long, so she gives us the answer just a couple pages later. With that said, if the author's name was not here, I would never have guessed that this was the same author as the Veronica Speedwell series. So if you're looking for like the romance or the banter or Veronica's like really clear personality traits, if you just want more of that, this doesn't deliver that. This really is something completely different. If you DNF'd it super early in the book, I would say it gets better and it is well written. But if you were like 40 to 70% of the way through and it wasn't doing it for you, I don't think that you're going to be super impressed with anything that's to come after. So 3 is where I'm landing, and hopefully my next read is more of a win.
The first book I DNF'd this month was All Hallows by Christopher Golden. I just could not get into it. At least like the first 30% of the story, it was just wordy and it was taking time to get into, and it was just not what I was looking for, not what I was in the mood for. This is probably not a bad book. I'm sure people are gonna enjoy this and have a lot of fun with it.
And then I DNF'd All Hallows this morning because I read one more chapter and then I was like, this is really not capturing my attention. The beginning started off strong. It started like that movie Trick or Treat started exactly that way. It has promise. Like, it talks about this cunning man who in my head just reminds me of Michael Myers, and it was getting there. It's just slow, and you know, it doesn't give that like wow factor of spooky season. Like, such a disappointment.
So I actually have a live show later today for the Literally Dead Book Club with Jan, and since I think we had similar thoughts and ratings about Whisper Down the Lane, which we'll be discussing, we'll see if we have similar thoughts about All Hallows. Jan is a horror girly. So I think especially when you do a book about Halloween, like you're expecting the scares to come in early and often. At 60 pages in, I can definitely see why this doesn't really deliver that, but I'm having a good time. So I DNF'd Road of Bones pretty late into the book. Oh, you can see where I stopped. That's like 3/4 of the way. This was blurbed by anyone who's anyone. And interestingly, All Hallows, there's nobody. All the blurbs on the back are continuing to praise Road of Bones. This is a really slow, drawn out ghost kind of story, and I never felt connected to the characters, and then the scares weren't enough to make me keep reading, so I gave up on it. This one I think is going to have an equally slow build, but I find the characters interesting, so I'm on board. It is very suburban. We're just in this neighborhood. So far we've been following 3 characters' POVs. We have Tony, who is setting up this forest of scares that he does every Halloween with his teenage daughter. It's how they connect. I think they're planning on moving soon, so this is their last big event. Then we have Vanessa, who I think was the teenage girl, a different teenage girl, and she has a friend who's a little bit younger, and everyone assumes that they're interested in each other, but she is a lesbian, but hasn't told anybody that yet. I don't really know what's going to go on with their storyline. The synopsis talks about how there's a group of children who are going trick-or-treating, or like the children in the neighborhood come upon other children who like came from the woods, and they're looking for someone to save them from the cunning man. So maybe all of these teenagers, like that's what's gonna go on with them. And then we have Barb, who's a mother in the neighborhood in a 3rd family, and she's like running around trying to find her husband who disappeared on Halloween night when he's supposed to be at home, and he says he's at work. She thinks he's having an affair. So we're going back and forth between them, but then we do have some other character names. So I do like stories where we have a bunch of POVs, we're jumping between everybody. And what I think Christopher Golden loves doing is atmosphere. It's not necessarily a scary atmosphere that he's building, but he is successfully building the vibe and setting up the situation. You know what the streets look like and the houses look like and the weather. He's really taking his time to do that, and I'm liking it more this time around. Okay, live show's over. I just read some more of this. I am officially halfway through, and now I'm taking a pause because I'm gonna watch hockey. I think this is probably not a great choice for me to read right now, just because it follows a bunch of kids the same age as my kid. And I like the things that it's saying. Like, it's got some funny, very knowledgeable facts about 13-year-olds. Just how like suddenly you hit that age and everything your parents do is super uncool. So I love the perspective we're getting there from all these parents and their relationship with their children. But the children are like on their own. They're out It's the 80s in Massachusetts, and the kids are out on Halloween night and they're just doing their own thing, and they are without parental supervision and all the things, the terrible things they get up to and they encounter. And yeah, they're coming into contact with these like children from the woods. And my child is currently out at a sleepover, and now it's probably gonna give me worrying feelings about what he's up to. But since Liam's not here, we're gonna have his least favorite food for dinner, because if I tried to serve him soup, he would be upset. And we're gonna watch hockey because it's finally the finals, and I'm very excited to watch. My prediction is Vegas. It's tough because you've only seen them play other teams. I just feel like Florida has had some more energy, but Vegas has had better strategy. So here's my soup. You can't see it. Check it out. Here's a little asparagus salad. I'll see you in a minute. All right, let me make this kind of quick. I need to go to bed. Rob's playing video games. I don't want to keep you here very long because I really don't have much to say about this. I think it was a fine book. I feel kind of nothing towards it. The majority of DNFs that I'm seeing are between like the 30 and 50% mark. So people are giving it a good effort. And at that point, I will say the horror picked up, especially the last maybe 15 to 20%. It got real. Like, it had a lot of stuff happening. It had that horror vibe with explanation. So if you like that kind of horror that has rules and there are things to learn and you're in a bunch of different POVs as they're learning these things, while also like having affairs and caring for their children, and all of these friendships are going on. It felt like a mix of like Imaginary Friend meets Big Little Lies. And then obviously Stranger Things thrown in, because I think, sure, these names were probably just popular at this time. And it may be a coincidence, but using Nancy, Steve, Barb, and Billy definitely feels like a ploy to get a Stranger Things reference, which the publisher did do. It's everywhere. Everyone's saying that this is similar to Stranger Things. And I would say in some aspects, yes, I absolutely get that reference. And then there were a couple things that I think actually went a little too far and were scenes that felt very like too reminiscent of Stranger Things. Just a couple, and they were quick scenes, but just the things that the characters were experiencing in their bodies and then certain things in the woods. But it definitely has its own storyline. This idea of the cunning man and the things that he's doing and luring the children. It's not a new story. If you already like domestic stories and mystery plots, and you like many POVs that I've seen some people say on the Goodreads page that they found confusing or difficult to follow, but if you're looking for just the Halloween vibes the entire time, it's not that. So I'm gonna give it like a 2.75, a 3, because even when the scary things happened, I wasn't super interested in the plot. I was more interested in the characters. But then also I think the book just went on too long. I think Christopher Golden should give novellas a try because the concepts are cool, but he really takes a long time to build things out. And then is it really worth it? Because it's not like there's this huge twist, huge reveal. So I wouldn't tell people who DNF'd it to pick it back up, but I also wouldn't dissuade other people from picking it up and starting it, knowing that it's going to be a slow open. But yeah, I didn't update you for so long because just nothing that interesting was happening with the actual scares of it all. Hockey was great. Vegas won. Vegas has just been such an entertaining team to watch this season, and tonight was no different, and I'm excited to continue. Tomorrow, Liam is in a baseball tournament, so he had 2 games today, 1 on Friday and 2 tomorrow. I didn't go to the ones today, but I'm going to the ones tomorrow, so I don't know if I should bring a book. I'll figure it out and I'll update you at some point. Okay, hello. This is definitely not how I would prefer to look when updating you, but I needed to document that I'm starting Big Swiss now. And maybe I won't update you until I finished it because I don't feel like really filming today. I am so tired. It was a really long baseball day. Liam's team ended up in 3rd place of 8 teams in the tournament. So he got a medal, which was exciting. The first game of the day was a terrible, like the kind of terrible that led to arguments between umpire, coaches, parents. The second game was just fun. Everyone was there to just have a good time. I didn't get any reading done. I didn't bring my book. I was just existing in the real world. Look at me go. So I'm starting Big Swiss. Hopefully I will have an update for you and I'll tell you what it's about. I don't feel like doing that right now, but I am starting it, just so you know. I did indeed finish Big Swiss, and here are my fresh thoughts just having finished it. If you DNF'd it early, like in the first 15% like me, just because it didn't grab your attention, I would say pick it back up and continue. I feel like the writing style becomes more familiar, you do become more interested in these characters, and it's an interesting time if you already like the unhinged woman kind of book. Now, if you're new to the concept, the phrase DNF thing, side note, I know that DNFing and DNF'd is not proper grammar. Like, you wouldn't say I did not finished or I'm did not finishing. It's fine, I don't care. But if you're new to that phrase, there's also like what people say is a soft DNF and a hard DNF. So I've seen people soft DNF this like I did. It was just like in the moment there were other things that were more interesting and I had no reason to continue because it didn't kick off in a really exciting way. A hard DNF is fine and usually happens later in the book if like the book does something, from what I've noticed, to really bother somebody and they just don't want to finish it, like ever. And a hard DNF usually means you like probably flip to the end to see if there were any reveals or anything that you were waiting to find out about. So if you did hard DNF this, especially if you hard DNF'd it later in the book, which is the majority of ones that I've seen, is people saying it got too sexually explicit or something made them uncomfortable, they did not want to finish it, that's totally fine. And I definitely understand those people and what the book did or didn't do for them. But if it was just like the beginning didn't do a lot for you, pick it back up. But with the knowledge that it does stay the same tone throughout, there isn't a big reveal, there isn't a climactic moment that I feel like is going to change the entire book if you are bored by the plot that's already happening. I personally am glad that I picked this back up because I ended up giving it a 4, which is pretty good. So we're following a woman named Greta, and she is working as like this, I instantly forgot the word, transcriber for this like therapist, sex therapist. He is having meetings with clients and she is tasked with listening to them and typing them out for various reasons. He's planning on writing a book, etc., and this is her job. So she gets to like learn all the intimate details about these people, never does anything with the information because they're not people she knows in real life. She's just an outside perspective. She listens in, she gets all of the gossip and drama. And then one day he meets with this woman who they all go by initials, so she doesn't know anybody's full name. And so she nicknames her Big Swiss because of her accent and gets to know all of these intimate details about her life, including like some really horrific things that have happened to her. And then one day she overhears a voice in real life and realizes it's this woman. And so she inserts herself into her life because she has become enamored with her. So they start off this friendship slash relationship under false pretenses. She took on like a fake identity. She's making up this fake life, which is definitely an uncomfortable feeling. Like, this is one of those books that I would put in it's definitely in the unhinged woman category, but if I were to grab a bunch of books off my shelves, let's do that are unhinged women, or just give off that kind of vibe, like Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead, or Death in Her Hands, Luster, funny, night bitch, woman eating. I would say it's more in this category. That's just like real life mundane activities and relationships, more so than these ones that get weird or that the writing style is weird, because this I've seen categorized as weird fiction. It's not that weird. Like, sure, they say some weird things and the setup is a little bit weird, but I think the cover definitely implies a stranger, more like leaning almost horror feeling, and it's not. Also, not that people thought that this was a romance, but when you hear that it's about these two women and they are building a relationship and the relationship is a lot of the book, I think maybe it could come across like it's supposed to be a positive thing or it's going to have romantic feelings. And maybe I'm alone in this, but I also felt similarly about Normal People, which I gave a 4, and The Book of the Most Precious Substance, which I gave a 5, which is like books that have relationships at the heart of them and are about these connections or sexual exploits people are having, but it's not like supposed to be a feel-good relationship story. Not that it's on the other end of the spectrum, that it's this horrible toxic relationship either. It just is. It's just these women's existence. And I would say style-wise, if you liked Luster, you'll probably like this one. I don't know if that helped anybody decide if they wanted to continue on with it or pick it up to begin with, but those are my thoughts on Big Swiss. I need to go wash my hair now, and I think I'm gonna start in on Babel today. So I started filming clips for that montage, right? Like I thought I was gonna read the entire evening and I was just gonna film all of these clips and then put it together, and it was gonna be this long montage. Because I also am really intimidated by this book, probably because of the length and what it's about. Like it's about language, and it's a whole character who is learning. The whole thing is about taking class and learning stuff, and I thought it was gonna be really dense. And it's been intimidating me, especially because people say they DNF'd it. I'm like, okay, so I'm gonna struggle. And I was thinking I'll probably get like halfway through before I can even give you a cohesive idea of what it's about, but I need to stop just after the first 3 chapters because I love this and I need to tell you about it. So it's about this kid who this like kind of anonymous benefactor has been giving him learnings and books and teaching him from afar for his childhood, and then when he gets to a certain age, he's taken by that man into his home to be given the opportunity of like the full education that he wants to give him. It's still vague like why and what's even happening, but that man, there was just a little, our main character, Robin, who even him like selecting his own name was a really interesting part. He overhears his like mentor, caregiver, father figure, whatever, talking with other men, and the other men being like, oh, this kid is different or the same as the other ones you brought in. It's like, what do you mean? Like, what is his goal? What is he trying to accomplish? Why is he doing these things with these children? I thought it was going to be a really warm, found family kind of story where he has this beautiful, soft upbringing, then goes off to Oxford and learns all of these things. The person who is offering him these opportunities, he just beat the shit out of him. So I was not expecting that. And now I'm at the point where he is going to Oxford, and the language stuff I'm just loving so much. I love following someone who's learning the history of words because I'm also learning the history of words. I didn't know that this would be something I wanted to post it so much, but I do, and I don't have any. Like, this is all I've got. These are little ones that I found that Rob uses in his textbooks. And all of my Post-its I ran out a while ago. So I'm thinking I actually need to pause when I run out of Post-its and pick this back up tomorrow when I have more, because I absolutely want to tab everything. The blue ones right now are language specific, like how forbidden fruit in the Bible is always appears as an apple, but how it probably wasn't an apple, and like where the words come from and how everything's connected, and it's probably like a persimmon. And then my red tabs are just things about Robin and his life, like people he's interacting with, characters I want to remember, and then moments of racism and ignorance that he's experiencing. He's Cantonese, and obviously he's entering this very white-centric situation and education, and I just need more tab colors because I want to distinguish more things. So far, I'm loving it, and I wanted to let you know. I can't imagine at this point why anybody would DNF. And I also don't know what the plot is. Like, they're talking about silver, and this is fantasy, and there's like silver working and silver does something, but I do not know the plot of this outside of what the main character is learning. So I'm very curious where this is gonna go, but I feel like I'm gonna have to pause it soon. All right, friends, I need to make this quick because it's very hot today and I can't sit here with my AC off for very long. I posted to my Instagram story last night some of my chaotic highlighting in Babel, and I just think it's very funny that 4 years ago, if I were to mark at all in my books or be outspoken as I was about wanting to personalize all of my books and I wanted them to have me in them, I wasn't worried about resale and stuff like that, people really had a lot of opinions. And nowadays it has just completely switched to being like, you need to make your annotations and your highlighting cuter. Like, that's how people feel about my highlighting. That it doesn't just need to be me marking down the things that I like and the things I want to go back to, but it has to be aesthetically pleasing. So I did go ahead and go to the Post-it and highlighting just dream world that is Staples, and I grabbed some Post-its and some skinnier pastel highlighters. So now I'm allowed to really go to town. I'm halfway through Babel. I am absolutely eating it up. I don't want to stop reading it. I had to drop Liam off at baseball practice, and then I just went and got my nails done. A couple people asked about the color, and I don't do them myself, so I couldn't tell you, but I just checked at the bottle, and it's number 46. from So Gel. I don't know if that'll help you. So this is told in a series of 5 books, and I have been rating each book. So book 1 got 5 stars, book 2 got 5 stars, and now I'm almost done book 3. And they're not each divided up into like a year of Robin's life. Oh, sorry, I have to turn the AC on. I'm struggling. Like time passes within each of these sections, but there is kind of an impactful moment within each one. So there's different, I would say like social circles, just like different groups of people that he's engaging with throughout his time at Oxford. He's got his like cohort where there's only a couple of them and they're doing all of the language and translation stuff. They obviously share such a unique experience that only they can relate to. And then he's got like his, you know, teachers and mentors and the people who challenge him but are also essentially exploiting him, the things that he comes to decide and realize. And then he also has a group of people, or one specific person at this point, but there is a bigger group of people who are participating in a kind of revolution, who are bringing attention to the fact that there is a lot of exploitation. This is a book about colonialism, so a lot of the conversations that Robin is having, or the things that he's saying, is like, how come we are taking all of the silver from this part of the world and the people who we're taking it from aren't benefiting? He's saying all of these things, and then he comes into contact with people who are giving him even more ideas of how the world really works, all the issues that there are. I think the people who've DNF'd it, I've seen partially is people saying like the colonizer conversation is too heavy-handed and they don't need to learn all of that stuff, so they didn't enjoy it. I completely disagree as far as my own personal taste. I love the heavy-handedness of it all. I love when a book says the same thing 10 different times and just hammers home like a really strong point. I think some people have DNF because if you read a lot of like epic fantasy and you saw a lot of people giving this 5 stars, hugely praising it last year and then referring to it as fantasy, maybe there was different expectations going in than what it is. And then at the same time, if people pitched it as dark academia, which it is, maybe based on things that you've picked up before that are dark academia, or got pitched as dark academia, you may have certain expectations again of what this is. Having not finished it, I can't really tell anybody else if they should go ahead and do so, but I'm obsessed with it. I think this is fantastic. It's doing everything that I want it to do. It's obviously extremely well researched and I find it fascinating, so I'm having just a perfect time. It's my 3rd and final day of reading Babel. I'm finally in the final book. I'm still in my pajamas. I had to give book 4 4 out of 5 stars. I think that, oh my god, I just found my tweezers. And I knew Rob had taken them, but I wasn't gonna text him and be like, where did you put my tweezers? Because they were definitely in my nightstand. Because people use them and then they go missing. I never put them back. Okay, what was I saying? I understand not liking Babel. If it's not for you, it's not your type of story, like that's fine. But I think that you can't deny this is successful in what it's doing. The book that it is, not the book that you want it to be. It is doing exactly what it intends to do. It's successful in its goals, I think. And it just happens to be a story I really like. I think I could go to all of the reviews and the DNF explanations that I see, and all the negative qualities that people use are probably positive qualities for me. Things like, this reads like a textbook. I love that. Things like the magic system isn't really humongous and well explained and it only comes in once in a while. I think that is so effective because when the magic comes in, it is a big deal, and that is when big moments are happening. Book 3 that I read last night was incredible. They're going on this journey and they are acting as translators, Robin and his cohort, and learning more about the world. And there's just like little things that come into it that I feel like are really relatable as a student, especially if you have attended like a master's degree, which I haven't, but I know people talk about the fact that like certain teachers often don't consider that you're taking other classes in a full course load and having to accomplish everything all at the same time. Like every course feels like a full-time experience. And there was also this moment where they were talking about like if they left school and they just wanted to start employment, what that would even look like, and how none of them are prepared for the real world. Even though they're at the top school and they're the top students, they actually don't even know how they would begin to go and look for a job. That book was definitely the most successful for me. There's this tension that's building the entire time. And if you look at my post-its, pink represents like character development, like character building that I found interesting. And then the yellow is language, the orange is world building. So you see a lot of that at the beginning of the book. And then blue is like scenes of note, just things that I thought were interesting, impactful, climactic scenes. And then green is moments of like critique about the world, certain prejudice that people are facing, key moments like that. And you can see in that section of the book, it's pretty much all green and blue for me. So that just feels like there's this built up tension and then it comes to a head and oh my gosh, I just didn't know that's where the story was going. And it's not like if you have DNF'd it and you want to pick it back up, I also don't want to oversell it. It's not like the book gets epic. It's that it even gets more intimate actually. And the impactful scenes are very small and quiet. And I would say like if you did DNF it in the first half, it's probably not worth picking back up because it is the entire same tone. Like the purpose of the book is clear from the very beginning in my mind. And if you're just not interested in that, then that's fine. And then book 4 is the shortest and it's when the most action takes place. Decisions are being made and people are really taking a look at their education and the things that are happening and wars, revolutions, and the whole conversation around trade and exploitation and, you know, the British Empire wanting to be able to go into different countries and do whatever they want and bring whatever they want with them and the pushback involved. So all of the action that takes place, it happened a little too quickly for me. And also, here's the only thing that I would say at this point the book isn't super successful at is it is Robin's story. Like objectively, it is about Robin, it's about his experience. But at times it feels like it wants to be an ensemble cast and introduces this group of 4 translators and talks about their connection, but there isn't a lot of scenes one-on-one or in a group of 3 where it really feels like those other 3 are getting equal page time or time for us to get to know them individually or feel like there is this really strong relationship. But then there will be moments where there's like a sacrifice or a betrayal or something is said that I think would have felt more impactful if we had more evidence of their friendship. But it'll say it all the time. It'll do reflections. It'll even do foreshadowing and say things like they would look back on this time as this like important moment in their group dynamic. But most of the scenes where we see their connection, it's all 4 of them and it just like runs through every character. So it'll be like Raimi is doing this and Letty felt this way and Robin said this, and it's just like these little moments. And I think we need especially more one-on-one connection to feel the impact that I think R.F. Kuang is trying to portray. Because I can think about other books that have this classroom setting that have an ensemble cast like The Secret History and If We Were Villains that still feel like they have a clear main character, but you also feel impacted by the storylines regarding everybody in the story. So I'm now in the final section. I feel like I can kind of predict where the story is going to go. Again, it has a clear intent, so we'll see how I feel about the ending. And no one is surprised. I loved Babel. I think it didn't quite have the emotional impact at the end that I was expecting to have, because I know people talk about how they cried, how it's like the greatest book they've ever read. I loved it. And I think the slight lack of an impact it had in certain areas for me is just a pacing issue. The ending happened a little too fast. I think if we took a little more time for Robin to get to know the school before kind of finding a new perspective on academia, that could have been beneficial. If we had a little bit more time in the revolution itself. But I just think this was stunning. I think it was incredibly well done. I understand everybody who loved it. I think I have to land on a 4.5 to get really specific about it, because it's not a perfect book. Not that all the 5 stars I've given out this year have been perfect books, but I don't think this book is without its critique. I do think that some people, like the super negative reviews, sometimes it seems like they're more mad at people who praised it than the book itself. So I don't know how to feel about that, but it seems like there's a lot of negativity around this book that I didn't even know about until now. People saying they felt like bamboozled and this was so overhyped and it's not what they were expecting, which I just feel like this is exactly what I was expecting. I don't know. And I feel like the word boring has lost all impact because I know that I use it to mean totally different things. I'm definitely gonna try to steer towards like saying I was bored rather than the book was boring, because people saying that this was boring is actually confusing to me. I don't think it was boring at all. At any point was I uninterested. With that said, it's a really low plot, sure. It's low, it's funny because it's low plot, but like huge detrimental global impact within its pages still. That's all I'm gonna say about that. Had a great time. I don't know if you should finish reading it if you DNF'd it. I don't know. I have no opinion.
I just DNF'd a book today. I was reading episode 13 by Craig DeLuey. The entire book is mixed media, which I did not know. So I read like 40-ish% of it and I just was not super into it. There's like 4 to 6-ish characters as well. So it's like taking a bit to get to know all of them. Spooky things aren't happening as much. Hopefully other people enjoy it. I've seen a lot of people are excited for it.
We're in the final stretch of the video and I started episode 13 last night. I remembered everybody told me to listen to the audiobook, so I did pick that up. And I feel like I got just as far as Ashley did, and I was considering DNFing. If it wasn't for this video, I might have put it down. I also just feel like mystery, thriller, and horror books, those are the easiest genres to DNF because the whole point of them is to make you feel like unsettled and intrigued. So if none of that is happening in the first like even 20 pages, it can be easy to put it down. But as somebody who loves found footage and mixed media, I was surprised by how I wasn't pulled in right away, and I did need some more of the characters. So the storyline is there is this group of people staying in this supposedly haunted house and they're doing paranormal investigation. They're building out this TV show and they're in the last couple episodes and they really need a good hook. They really need a great episode for the show to continue. And you learn all of that via many things. Text conversations, journal entries. Each person is keeping their own journal. And then also they're just constantly filming. So you get clips of what is actually going to end up being in the episode and what you visually see. So it reminds me a little bit of Naturally House of Leaves, but even more so, a book that I loved that I know not everybody did, The Last Final Girl by Stephen Graham Jones, just based on all of the camera angles and the explanation of the footage. The group dynamic wasn't the most interesting right off the bat. There's a husband and wife. There's like an actress who is on the show just for that kind of like over the top appeal. There's another guy, there's just some various characters. There's a guy who's doing most of the camera work. And as the studio or whoever is getting the footage of the show, they decide that the hook is going to be these people's personal lives. It honestly weirdly reminded me of, I can't even remember, is it called Mind Hunters? What is that show where there's the two guys and they fact check things? Mind Hunters is definitely wrong. What is it called? Mythbusters. And they have that redheaded girl who also does stuff, but she's more like the on-camera personality too. That's the dynamic that I feel between these people. It's they're kind of not getting along. They challenge each other, but they're all there for this experience, for this show. So that explains why there's much more footage of them doing things rather than just the paranormal activity, because they want to start, the studio wants them to start filming all of their interactions and creating characters for them each to embody. But now today I have gotten to maybe the 70% mark and I'm liking it now. You get to know all these people obviously better. I feel like the scares have come into it. It is objectively the truth that there are ghosts. It is undoubtedly haunted. That's not the opinion of the people, that's the opinion of the book, that there are ghosts factually. And now these people are trying to prove it and talking about how their lives are going to completely change after, and how the world is going to be different after they have literally proven that there are ghosts. And the book describes to us via the footage the entities and things that we're seeing and they're seeing. I wouldn't say it's frightening to me. I also like, while I do understand the production quality of the audiobook is great, and if you like that dramatized version of books, definitely pick it up, but it also is like a little too much for me and maybe is leaning a little bit cheesy with all of the sound effects, and it'll be like Jessica screamed, "Ah!" instead of playing them on top of each other, or like sometimes it's before, sometimes it's after, but just, I don't know, it loses some of the tension when you know that there's this like sound clip coming. Right now I would probably rate it like a 3.5. But this ending, depending how it goes, and if there's any like twists and turns, that's what would make me tell somebody they need to pick it back up if they have DNF'd it. So I'm gonna go finish it. It's a really fast read, obviously, because it, you know, looks like this for a good portion of it. It's divided up into days, but I'm surprised with how fast the audiobook is going for sure. You know, speaking of House of Leaves, the same way that Babel is a thematic response to The Secret History, and you can tell that this was written by somebody who's read The Secret History, I feel like you can tell that episode 13, I'm just assuming, was written by somebody who read House of Leaves, and not just because of similar themes and stuff, but even the things that are different. It feels like it was intentionally a thematic response to that. It was tighter. It had a certain character who, like, the whole concept here is there's this man who gets so obsessed with the house and wanting to go deeper into the house and find out what's happening. And we also have a haunted house in here, but the husband is so in love with his wife that he's willing to abandon anything for her. And I think there's just some really interesting directions this took. It gets weird, which is fun. I don't think it's a scary haunted story, a horror story. It is more paranormal, investigative, where the interesting part is learning about it. And then much like House of Leaves is like a labyrinth, this feels the same way, where everybody starts to lose it and the plot starts to lose it. The writing style gets a little more chaotic, and it was a really fun read. I don't know what I would rate it. I feel like it's near a 4, but I don't know that it's a solid 4. I do think if you DNF'd it, I would maybe recommend picking it up again, because you do obviously get to know the characters better. It doesn't stop being mixed media, and it isn't suddenly scary to read. It's a similar tone throughout, but it is interesting. At least I think so. And that's from somebody who wasn't really interested for the first quarter. I don't think it's a life-changing one, but it was fun. I really need a 5-star horror this year. That's all I can think about right now, because I have yet to find one. But that's it. We're at the end of the video. I gave out a 2.75, a 3, a 3.75, a 4, and a 4.5. Obviously, I'm not actually challenging anybody's DNFs. If you wanted to stop reading a book on page 1 or page 299 of 300, I think you should just do whatever you want. But since these were stopped by multiple people, maybe I have given you some information if you should continue. I feel like I liked some of them the same as the average person, and I liked some more than the average person. I even liked some less than the average person. When you think about this one, it's one of the most highly rated books like on Goodreads. As always, it's fun to read things from my TBR and to get more in tune with my reading. I hope you had a good time in this vlog, and I will see you again soon. Bye.